I'm Lori Jones, President and CEO of Avasec Communications and host of StrategyCast. Join me and my guests, innovators, disruptors, and visionaries as we explore bold and brave marketing strategies that help you transform, scale, and grow your brand. Get ready to dive into the world of strategic branding in today's episode of StrategyCast. My guest today is the amazing Maria Trysla, a visionary and tactical marketing leader with 30 years of experience in SaaS, technology, and telecommunications. Maria is bringing the heat with insights on defining your brand's DNA, the evolution of brand positioning, navigating market shifts, and creating a customer-focused business strategy. Join us for a lively, inspirational, and educational conversation that will elevate your marketing game. And don't forget to check out the most recent issue of StrategyFirst Newsletter on StrategyCast.com. Just like this episode, it's full of inspiration and a ton of ideas that will elevate your strategies and marketing know-how.
A competitive edge starts with strategy, and strategy starts with knowing how to develop one. StrategyCast is a leading marketing podcast that serves up strategic insights, trends, and tips to help separate your business from the pack. Tune in weekly as host Lori Jones interviews bold marketing leaders who have priceless wisdom and are willing to share. Each episode explores cutting-edge approaches that have proven instrumental in transforming brands into industry trailblazers.
Welcome to StrategyCast. I am so excited to have Maria Trysla on the show today. Welcome.
Thanks, Lori. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, I tell you, it's a long time coming, right?
We had a couple reschedules.
Yeah,
Yes.
Maria and I have been like two ships sailing at night. Such incredible insight. We're going to talk all about brand positioning. That creates clarity about who we serve today. You've got a special sauce approach that we're going to dive into. Before we get there, tell us a little bit about you and your background and your love for marketing.
A little bit about me, huh? I've been in various marketing and leadership roles for 30 years. Usually, my experience more is in SaaS, technology, and telecommunications. I've led marketing, sales, and business teams as VP of marketing and as Chief Revenue Officer, as an employee, a consultant, or even advisor to PE and VC firms. And I've even had the title of CEO for 2 SaaS companies, resulting in a 65% growth period over a 3-year period during the pandemic and rising inflation, as we all remember that. While I may not feel as old as I am, I do think this is an exciting time to be in marketing. This has always been my passion in my workspace. I think with the opportunities that exist with AI, with influencer and experimental marketing strategies, these are all interesting opportunities for marketing at this point in time. As we all know, there's some severe headwinds as relates to how marketing is perceived in the C-suite and throughout the organization, but I'm not going to be negative Nelly and kind of harp on that. I do think if nothing else today, my goal will be for you all to think strategically, look up and see the big picture and go to the top of the mountain.
That's why we're StrategyCast, right? I mean, great marketing begins with a great marketing strategy and, quite frankly, a good business strategy as well. I'm writing a column that will hit in February about without a great business strategy, the marketing strategy usually cannot trump it. And, you can't fake it till you make it. And that is one of the things that I think is so important here. And what I love about your background is your CEO roles, the VP roles, the CMO roles. So you absolutely need to make sure that good, that business strategy is in place in order for marketing to succeed. What is your point of view out there, on that regarding how sometimes that's the missing link?
You've hit on, it's so true. And in fact, I had a past in my past situation where I went in and I started to talk about the need to establish our brand strategy. And the CEO says, well, wait a minute, we don't have a vision and mission. So then I went off and I defined the vision and mission. If your business strategy, if your vision and mission is not stated, it may be marketing highlighting that. That's just my example. And don't be afraid to ask those tough questions. Do we have a defined business strategy that really resonates in the marketplace? Because you can't define your brand or marketing strategy without that business strategy. You start at the top. Absolutely. And in my situation, it was even higher than that. It was our vision and mission needed to be refreshed, that kind of thing. So it's not uncommon for marketing to kind of shine the light in regards to, the C-suite, et cetera, to ensure that those things are defined and agreed upon. Like no covert resistance, as we used to call when I was an employee of Sprint, which is you agree to something and then you leave the meeting and you do what you want. So no covert resistance. Everybody has to be in the boat rowing the same way.
Yeah, I completely agree. You have so many gifts. You have such incredible insight. You are such a powerhouse, and you can't imagine how excited I am to have you on the show. So I just want to say thank you again for that. Um, as I mentioned, you've got an incredible approach to really developing brand strategy. And it is one of those areas that all too often people push aside. They feel that all they need is awareness or all they need is demand gen, and they start right there. They're not starting up at the top of the need for that strategy. Explain give a quick overview of your process, and then we're going to deep dive into each of the areas.
Yeah. I think it's really, I'll do a shout out to the Marketing by Millennial podcast, because it's a newsletter. They have a visual, and it really says a lot of times product starts down here at the mountain and it's the shape of a mountain, and marketing starts over here, and it's all about tactics and it's not about the strategy. So that's when I reference get on the top of the mountain. I would shout out to Marketing Millennial for highlighting that. But it all starts with positioning, and positioning at its core focuses on answering two fundamental questions: who you are as a company and why does your customer matter? So that is really core to that. I add into that, which is somewhat new thinking around positioning DNA. So positioning DNA is that to identify how your company is focused. So are you a company focused on product? Are you a company focused on the customer? Are you a company focused on a concept? All of those, that's the positioning DNA that kind of makes this going from good to great. And identifying your positioning DNA is somewhat of a new concept, and you need to avoid sending your product or service in a competitive segment that is not in agreement with your company's strategy. So to your point of your business strategy, and really, it really will thwart success for your company. So basically, both positioning and positioning DNA are the rational statements that inform branding that is more emotive expression. So everyone kind of thinks about, branding being this soft touch and this, almost like a qualitative, emotive discussion and expression through logo, colors, tone of voice, messaging, customer experience, and more. It is that. But higher up, you have to define your positioning DNA, and that, which are all rational statements. And then you can move into brand, which might be a little more emotive and more qualitative.
One thing that I probably heard, it is got to be 25 years ago, is that we position for share of market and we brand per share of heart.
Yeah.
And that to me there's this intersection between the two. And I agree with you. All too often people get positioning wrong.
Yeah.
Get completely wrong. And they're taking a look at it as look and feel and tone and voice and, all these essence components, which really is not what's needed to get into a market that is ownable, that you can differentiate within, and that really the competition isn't touching too well.
Absolutely. And brand is not a logo. That just
Yeah.
drives me crazy, right? And I mean, and think about how informed you are and how that information will affect how effective you are in your tactics in regards to search optimization or AI utilization, emotive expression experience, all of that heart-based conversation, and talk about galvanizing your employees. That's what's really at the essence of this. So start rational, start very business oriented, and check the boxes on those, and that feeds into the more the ability to speak to the heart, because you've already done the essence of it all.
Right. I love this concept of positioning DNA. How does it differ from the traditional approach people take to brand positioning?
um I think positioning DNA is an opportunity to have that strategic discussion to make sure that positioning DNA brings into a larger conversation. You can start to have conversation, like we said, what's the company's business strategy? What's your company's culture? What type of people are you hiring and promoting? How our product launch? How are product priced? How are customer treated as new, churned, and current, new, and existing and churned customers? All of these business initiatives contribute to that communication, that implementation, and aspiration of that positioning DNA. It's like, I stand here 5'4". I'm probably not going to play in the WNBA. Even as a guard,
Like
I know
both.
you need short people to handle the ball, but you probably need somebody taller than 5'4". So this is my DNA, and it's just the same as an organization. It's a living, breathing thing, and you have to continue to cultivate it and make sure that everything that you're doing as a company, from the admin to the CEO, is all in alignment with your positioning DNA. Because if you're trying to be something else than your company DNA, it's not going to work. Right? It's like me throwing me in the WNBA.
Yeah. What I
Probably
think,
not going to be the best outcome.
no, what I think is really cool about this approach is that it gets everyone in the C-suite talking. It gets the CEO saying, this is where we can be successful. This is what our investors want.
Mhm.
This is what the market wants from product development. Sales saying, I think that there's a real niche here that we can capitalize on that someone else isn't doing. And, so it really, instead of marketing starting without any of that, it really involves the rest of the team.
Absolutely. I mean, it's really important to have every member of the C-suite, and even some players that you think may not be engaged in the conversation, like the CFO and the CPO and the CHRO. Everyone needs to be in alignment and have this conversation. And when we're determining the positioning DNA, we're really asking, really, are you around those three tenets? Are you trying to solve a valuable customer need? Then you're customer focused. Are you trying to build and introduce a truly differentiated product? That's product focused. You have a goal to change the world. That's a concept focus. That's really high level and very simplistic view of how to define DNA. But you want to make sure that everyone, all the executives, are in alignment, so that and agreed upon again. So and maybe you haven't had these conversations, and maybe you have 10 people in the room and 8 people agree and 2 said, well, I didn't really think about it that way. But you're broadening my horizons, right? You're making me think outside the box. And that's where the real goodness comes, is from, people from these diverse backgrounds and different, kind of maybe different agendas or different objectives, but obviously all tied into the company, objectives. And all of that richness then, just produces a better output.
I love it. Now, prior to positioning DNA discussions taking place, are you doing front end research, competitive analysis, product, gap analysis, customer understanding and segmentation? What sort of things does marketing need to bring to the table to have a good discussion with everyone else?
Yeah, I think you've hit on it there. A lot of times it's marketing who's bringing, or at least bringing an idea, a propose to have a discussion. Because if you can imagine there's, 10 C-suite members or two, they're all going to have different opinions, right? So a lot of times it's up to marketing to provide something. It's like, staring at a blank page, or staring at something and shooting holes in it. So I'd highly suggest is marketing, just put a stake in the ground. It's not even a stake on the ground. Maybe it's a stick, but propose something to work on. And part of that is I like to start with discovery. And discovery is exactly what you're saying, is understanding the current brand and messaging, understanding what the strategic business plan is. Is the strategic plan documented and understood, right? How will the company grow revenue? That's really what the strategic business plan is looking to address. And then what are your current go-to-market assumptions? How are you going to market? With this knowledge as a baseline, you go and you move into qualitative research. And qualitative research I think is a great way to say interviews. So interviews internal stakeholders, right? Like your successful salespersons, your top line support and operations people. Those are the people that really, live on the front line every single day and have a great insight. In addition to interviewing, your C-suite, that kind of thing. A lot of times I also like to talk to people individually. So it's not a group. Sometimes it works as a group, but sometimes if you're in a group, the group will default to the highest member on the org chart. So sometimes it's great to have those one-on-ones, and which is a time commitment. It is, but I will tell you, after you do that, there are common themes that bubble up to the top. This is a great opportunity to take what you've learned internally and turn it externally. Talk to customers one-on-one right now. So more qualitative, we'll move into quantitative. You can test those theories, right? You can say, oh, we think we're customer focused. And, a customer is saying,
you're not.
oh my gosh, you're the furthest thing than I think of customer focused. Yeah. So that's where your DNA can get out of alignment. Qualitative research, if you have the time and money, I would highly suggest that you engage in qualitative research. And there are some very inexpensive ways. It doesn't have to be, a $100,000 expenditure. You can do, A/B testing. You can do, focus groups and really online groups. But the qualitative will start to validate all the thinking you have, and then it's obviously one to many too. So your group and your participant list is larger, and then finally you perform a gap analysis, and that gap analysis is, where is your brand now and where do you want it to be? And the goal here is, and then you're obviously going to have to figure out, how do you get from here to there? I'd give you a deadline of say 12 to 18 months. The market will give you some grace for 12 to 18 months, but that's about it. And so brand development then turns into what we have conversations around: brand promise, meaning what do customers experience every day? Brand personality, right? If your brand was a person, what kind of person would that be if it walked in the room? Brand drivers, brand pillars. That's where we get into the personality, and the promise gets a little more, emotive and that kind of thing. But this is really how and then you take it to your internal team, your executive stakeholders, and everyone that you interviewed, and said, this is what I heard. This is the assumptions of where we are and where we need to be. And let's go on this journey together.
Yeah. It's one thing that we run into quite often. And as you know, we're a strategy first agency, and without the strategy, unless it's an enterprise brand who's coming to us to work on something, very vertical, and they've already done the strategy, 9 out of 10 times we're doing the strategy work. And I think one of the areas that it falls flat is not engaging, or not the client not budgeting the time for at least customer or prospect interviews. We gain so much insight from what the market is telling us, the external side. There are a lot of assumptions made, we find quite often internally with teams. Talk to us about the importance of that step and why it can so easily get pushed aside.
We love to hear our own hype, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not trying to dismiss internal stakeholders. Obviously they're vested in the growth of the company, but their viewpoint is
To it.
isn't specific, right? And they think they understand the marketplace. And I fully suggest they probably know a lot what's going on in the marketplace, but it just behooves you to go have a conversation with customers. And a conversation could be, speaking to your top 5 customers, the company's top 5 customers, and just, how's it going? How do you think we're performing every day? If we could do anything better, what could we do? And then take it to a quantitative research where you can really get into purchasing behaviors, right? What triggers, someone to buy or to act, right? The buyer behaviors, you want to get to the point where and understand what that buyer persona is, again, because that's just going to make your execution across all disciplines, right? Your product is going to be better. Your marketing is obviously going to be better. Sales is going to be better because they're going to be better targeted. I'd largely say HR is going to be better because you're going to recruit like people that are like-minded like that want to serve in that purpose. So it's really important to make sure that, that you're very, obviously, you're very strategic in your mindset. And it's really important to validate your internal thinking, which, 9 times out of 10 might be right on, but what if you're wrong, right? It just gives you confidence. And if it repeats everything that you've said internally, way to go, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Take a high five.
affirmation and
Yes.
consistency. With these customer interviews, we have seen it both ways, where a very, very strong sales team will want to go in and take the lead on some of that. There can be some bias and feedback back to marketing. We find more often that marketing is able to ask very different questions that sales might, to truly understand the soft underbelly that could lead to a very strong marketing approach or a campaign approach.
Yeah. I mean, it gets to authenticity and truth, right? And not that anyone was lying about this, but it does, I've seen it work really well where the salesperson introduces you to the customer.
Yep.
And kind of almost paves the road for marketing to come in and have that conversation. I always like to start that conversation to say, I'm hoping to make this the most interesting meeting that you've had all week. You tell me if I succeeded or not, right? And marketing comes in, you're right, with a different viewpoint than sales. And there's, into your point about bias, right? If the salesperson is there and they have a direct relationship, will that customer feel comfortable saying whatever, right? Whatever it might be. They may have that type of relationship, and it, and they know it's for the good of the company, and hopefully, they see it as a win-win or a partnership where the input that they can provide to a company will allow that company to better serve their needs. So if you can sell it to that and say, listen, as a marketing person, I'm going to take very good care of your customer, salesperson, Mr. Salesperson or Ms. Salesperson. But you're right. There does need to be kind of a one-on-one conversation with marketing to the customer, because we're just going to talk about other things and no indictment in regards to sales.
How often do you find that the DNA does not exist?
I think that happens a lot.
Yeah.
And it's just, people can say that I know my positioning. We have a business strategy, but they haven't thought about positioning DNA, right? And it's a fairly new concept. There is a Harvard Business Review article about 15, 20 years old, which I still think is good. And I would highly recommend, you know what I'm talking about, right? And I'd highly recommend this book called, I'm going to get the name of it right here, Get to Aha, Discover Your Positioning DNA and Dominate Your Competition by Andy Cunningham. I kind of was introduced that. I gave the book to Lori. And, it's really, I don't think most companies have had the conversation, like, really, what am I? And 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 you can say, well, of course I have a product, I'm a product focused. Well, that doesn't necessarily define your DNA. If I'm customer focused, of course I'm customer focused, but that doesn't mean that you're living and breathing, a positioning DNA of customer and changing the world. Forget it. I mean, that's from the rare folks who go after, that type of positioning DNA. But it's a great conversation to have with your execs,
It
for
really
your
is.
executive team and your internal team, and hopefully the CMO is at executive table. I really think it's going to accelerate how marketing is viewed, but it's really important. I would say more times than not in today's marketplace, companies haven't really considered their DNA, but they've considered a lot of things around that, around positioning DNA.
It's something that I think is very confused today is culture.
Yeah.
As it becomes DNA, and that can't always become marketing.
Right.
And there is a lot of confusion in the marketplace between those two elements right now, and
That's
and a forced intersection that is not resulting, I believe, in strong messaging and marketing and differentiation and positioning. And it's very important. It's definitely more on the customer interaction side for sure. But what are you seeing regarding that?
I mean, when you think about it, what company wouldn't want to say, I'm product focused, I'm customer focused, and I
Right.
want to change the world, right? But you can't do it all.
Right.
And I guess I kind of point to examples, right? So, like for a customer focused DNA, here are a few examples, like Disney. That's not hard to imagine, right? When if you travel to Disney World or Disney World or Disneyland, you're encouraged to have a magical day, right? Another type of customer focused positioning DNA is Rolling Stone, which maybe isn't as maybe as succinct as or why it's a customer focused DNA. If you think about Rolling Stones, they are focused on celebrating the world of rock and roll. Now, do they cover other types of music like country and R&B and others? But not, yeah, they do, but not to the effect of they do rock and roll. That is a customer focused DNA. A product DNA would be like Microsoft. I use big, strategic brands so people can kind of walk with me in this journey.
Or GE, we light your way.
That's right. Yeah. GE light your way. Absolutely. Microsoft uses it in their acquisition strategy when they acquired Skype, right? Skype became a feature within the product portfolio. They're introducing products that have the new update, new feature. If you interact with Microsoft, customer support isn't that great, right? You can't talk to a live person, right? It's chat and help centers, but that's the way they're approaching it. Another part of that product DNA, and this is again maybe sounds a little bit off, but like Walmart, because they're adding value, right? They're trying to add value at a price point. And you think Walmart, but that's really part of being a product DNA.
Chipotle, food with integrity. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely great example. And then, the concept, the third being, I want to change the world, of course, Apple, right? Apple, nobody said we wanted an Apple iPhone, you ski where the puck was, right? Instead of where it's going and not where it was, that kind of thing. They invented the customer need. So they changed the world. Tesla is an example of that. Tesla was not the first to manufacture an electric car. However, they are the most successful. They're the most well-known, that kind of thing. But if you're looking to change the world, Lori, we're kind of the same age. FedEx, back when FedEx's, their marketing message was when it has to absolutely be there overnight. We were there around when you really had that conversation.
Yeah.
Right. And then, we weren't, by the way, in business. We were probably in high school or college. So everyone just knows and understands how old we are.
Thank you very much.
But, and then there were fast followers, right? UPS now does it. USPS now does it. but it's concept isn't hard to imagine and give examples like, but that's a risk, right? To be a concept brand, there probably are as many concept brands that have failed that haven't. Uber and Lyft, great examples, right? Uber is a concept brand. They changed how we implement short short travel, right? Short distance travel. They're even doing now, I guess, a Uber chopper. They're experimenting with that, right? Lyft is more customer focused, right? So you can see even two customers or two companies in the same segment operating differently. And it's just really important to define who you're going to be when you grow up, kind of thing. Because if not, you may be going down, oh, I think I'm a product brand. And then you have someone that come in and outmaneuvers you, a competitor that outmaneuvers you, or a concept brand that comes in and just, reinvent your category. And then you're left, flat-footed.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, it needs to be ownable.
Yes.
And typically first to market, it can be ownable for a certain amount of time. But in these examples that you just shared with us, they're fast followers. And ultimately, a key point here is quite often the DNA changes and you've got to reposition.
Absolutely. I think of Apple now. When Steve Jobs was leading, it was a concept brand. Now that Tim Cook is involved, it's more product focused. Right.
And do you think that one of the reasons why it began as concept, because we were changing buyer habits in such a big way, not even buyer habit, there was no habit.
There was no habit.
Yeah. We were changing the way the markets, that people look and go about daily life is what we did. I mean, about the impact that a phone has had on the camera.
I know.
And that is,
these little phones used to be all we would do was make a phone call, right?
Right.
And now they're mini computers.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, so that's how you that's where you see market shifts.
Oh, yeah.
That, early adopters lead to basically the dissolution of products and Kodaks of the world and so on and so forth.
Oh, absolutely.
Because they weren't keeping up. What challenges do you see along the way, or what are some of the common challenges that people should be concerned about?
I think you've hit on, exactly that, is constantly being a student of the marketplace, have that learning mentality. I always want to be, in the mindset of learning something new. And that includes, like, you think everything's going well in your company, and it's not unheard of for marketing in the C-suite executive to be the one to say, yeah, but what are we going to do in 3 to 5 years, right? Is this a sustainable position in 3 to 5 years? So always just be kind of that mindset of making, understanding and always listening to your customers, doing, a competitive analysis. I'd highly suggest doing it more often than right before strategic planning.
Right.
Because usually it's rushed. And so to your point earlier about what can marketing bring, that's what marketing can bring, is that, that understanding of the customer, and that, qualitative market research. Well, if you don't believe me, believe this study, right? Kind of thing. I think that's really important. I think it's really also important when you're defining your positioning and positioning DNA in your brand, is that you're involving, like we said, the entire C-suite, but, pick out those in the organization, maybe high performers, and take them on that journey too, because you're absolutely getting to a point where you want to have a company that's kind of living and breathing their DNA, right? That's where that's what takes us good to great, is companies that really personify that. And Disney is a perfect example. Many years ago, when I was in college, I was actually a cast member. Okay. I wasn't an employee. I was a cast member, right? I didn't have a job site. I had a show floor, right? Their Disney characters don't walk around if they're not in costume. I was not Mickey Mouse. I was not Minnie Mouse or anything like that.
You?
So I was, I was a lifeguard.
Still,
I have those too. So, I mean, that's where you personify, and that's where you can say, you level up your employees to say, how can How can I fulfill on the customer promise today? That's what takes you to good to great.
Yeah. I love that. How often, so the strategy is key. It's absolutely essential, but the creative implementation is what really brings it to life. One thing that is very important to Avocet and our clients, and why we get hired at Avocet, is we take very, very bold positioning with the creative output. We believe in this concept of range of acceptability, and it starts with boring, a 1 versus brave, a 10. And when you explain creative development to clients, and they get and you show them examples, competitive examples of everyone mostly being boring,
Yes.
and how you can really differentiate, which excels the sales process, brand adoption, the whole 9 yards, marketing, MQLs, SQLs. That is where the strategy shines. That's where it truly comes to life. But it's a hard sell sometimes. There are a lot of brands that just are very, very comfortable in not accelerating as quickly as they could because they want to take a very, very boring approach to their creative.
Yeah, and that's where I mean, in your position, you can lead the horse to water, right? And you can't make it drink, that kind of thing. But it's the it's the safe bet, right? In that continuum of, well, we're going to start, safe, and then we're going to go bold. But I mean, you're trying to break through. You're trying we as consumers are inundated with marketing messaging, right? And, I mean, through what we stream, what's on our phones, every single day we're inundated with hundreds of messages. How are you going to break through if you're boring?
10,000, by the way.
Right? Yeah. I mean, like one time it said you had to hear a message like 7 times, right? To make it stick. And now it's like, you're crazy. You have to break through. Yeah. And even it's not necessarily saying, it is necessary to say the same thing across multiple customer touch points. That's a great strategy too. Just make sure that everything you're saying is the same. But yeah, your creative and emotive expression is really important, And I've seen too many examples, where people go safe, but to really get, the breakthrough, it really can be exemplified in bold colors and expression and messaging and all of those emotive things. And one thing I would also caution against is involve your CEO in this. You think that they'll just be rolling their eyes. I would say, and I've been in that CEO position, so I was a wrapped audience because of my background, but maybe your CEO came up through finance, right? Or through operations or product or something like that, or even HR. They may not have this background. Bring them along in the journey. And if there's anybody else who's interested in that, because if you just show them and show up and go, hey, here it is, and it's this bold concept, they may go, they may have an adverse reaction. But if you've brought them along and the thinking behind it, that's where it really, that's where you're not going to get the objections. Or maybe it's not the bold choice, but it's one in and not over here, which is the boring, and like everybody else, like how you cannot stand out if you're just repeating what your competitor is, right?
When you took on your CEO roles in a couple of the last SaaS companies, one of them that you mentioned had a 65% increase in revenue during your tenure. How were you interacting with the marketing team, and how did you hire that marketing team to make sure that they fit within the DNA, your mindset of what you knew could be successful? Or did you?
I had an unbelievable marketing director who truly understood the brand and actually understand the company so well that a lot of times he would tell me, this is the way the brand is positioned, that kind of thing. And it was really a SaaS company that was really focused on self-serve. And it was really important that be the case. We did go through a brand exercise because they hadn't done it before. And, it was a small SaaS company, right? So guess who did it?
Yeah.
Me. So, I guess what I'm saying is don't be afraid to get your hands dirty, right? It was my background, is my experience. I knew, I could do it faster, right? So I did it, and it really kind of crystallized what we were doing. It crystallized our message. It didn't change it too much. I wouldn't say it was, it was black at first and now it's white, but it really crystallized our message, and it improved our execution around a digital execution that was really important to us, getting those leads and getting them in the door. So it was, it started with strategy. First,
Right.
it started with the business strategy. Now, and the weird thing is I was owning a lot of that, right? So I was owning the business strategy. I was owning the positioning. I was owning the positioning DNA. I did the brand development. But I couldn't come in and go, well, here it is, guys. I'm 30, 60 days in, and here it is. I brought everyone with me, and that's including the sales and product and marketing and the entire organization, along why the thinking was. And it was easier, I think, because it was a slight shift and not a huge incremental lift, which, most times might be the case. It might be just more, more tight execution that's necessary. Or, there might be I'm now an advisor and consultant, and I'm starting a new client that's, starting from scratch, has nothing. And so
Right.
there are times, I think most times you have a brand and it exists. And oh, by the way, if you haven't defined your brand, your customers get the opportunity to find it, and or your competitors. And that's not good. You may not like that. So be intentional.
Yeah,
Right?
that's very
Be
good.
intentional.
We have found, and we actually did a national survey in 2022 with CMOs across the United States to really get an understanding of what strategy is, how do they define it, and what their comfort was with it or not. And
Wow.
we basically found that 2/3, 1/3 felt very, very confident. I've got strategy nailed. I can deploy it. We've got a great team. Um, Another third felt that they had a lot of it nailed, but they needed validation with an outside entity such as, a communications firm like Avocet. And then a third of these CMOs felt that they did not understand it, that they always needed to be able to hire an outsourced firm, again, like Avocet. What have
Yeah.
you seen? Because you're obviously a very, very strategic person. You understand the development, but when do you find it that you need to be able to outsource some support?
Um, I'd say the creative aspect.
Yeah.
I told someone in my career, like, I'm never going to tell you it's red when it should be blue. That is not, that's not my area of expertise, right? I
Yep.
can look at something and say, is it bold? Is it really taking us in a journey? And I can take take the company from that gap. But
Right.
that is, I give my shout out to creatives. That is not me.
Yep.
And that's what takes and makes it, so important. And so, at one time, one organization I was with, we won a American Marketing Association award for the Colorado chapter. And it was for our internal agency. So we had an internal agency, but we also used external agencies. We're that big. And it was no slam on our external agencies. I think you need a balance of both.
Right.
And, I think it's always important from a creative, I kind of just, let others who are more equipped to do this. And so I would call you and say, Lori, I understand the business strategy, the positioning DNA, the positioning. We've got our brand architecture, but making it live, that's not me. And so that's really important, I think, to understand what your shortcomings is. So I applaud that survey to say, these are where my gaps might be. And we all have gaps, right? We all have gaps.
Oh, yeah.
So, and being authentic about that and say, where are my gaps? How do I get others to fill in that gap? So the group that says, hey, I'm not comfortable with strategy at all, find a consultant, find an advisor, come in, have the
Fractional
conversation.
CMO even.
There you go. Fractional
Yeah.
CMO, a marketing consultant like that. that could be a 3-month assignment and it would be well worth the money. For those that feel they have it, maybe they just need like a marketing research, arm to validate what they're thinking, right? They've got the strategy or they think they do. It just helps to have that conversation. I can't, maybe you're sitting there and going, I can't lead a market research initiative. And I would say I can't either. I can lead, one-on-one interviews, but I'm not necessarily. And that's where you go out and get those, qualified persons.
Yeah, those party
You
partners.
just got to figure out what it is your gap is, and then either supplement that with direct hires, or, we're all in the gig economy now, hire someone from the outside with that outside perspective. And I will tell you, as a marketer, like having conversations with you, Lori, always opens my eyes. Have conversations with peers.
Right.
Your marketing, your sales brethren, your HR, whatever discipline you're listening, have a network of people that stimulates your thinking. That is key, because then you're not sitting there going, oh my, am I missing the AI wavelength, right? What a new
bouncing off people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Have conversations. I will tell you, you're going to get something out of it, or you're going to validate your thinking. Like, this is how I was thinking. And that person may go, yeah, I agree with you there, but I disagree with you here. Immersive marketing, experimental marketing. Those are the kind of things that, are really important to have conversations with people about. It doesn't even have to be trends that are going on. It can be, this is what I'm thinking. What do you think? Join a group or have a LinkedIn network, but don't be shy about it. Like, don't think you have all the answers. Well, I certainly don't.
Well, and I don't either. And I think, these kind of conversations, and it's why we developed the podcast as well.
Yeah.
I think I am a better marketer in the last 7 years since we launched this podcast by just having these kind of conversations. I could not agree with you more on that. Before we leave today, what is the best way for our audience to be in touch with you?
Oh, I'd love to have a conversation with you if you'd like to talk about positioning DNA or positioning or brand development. I can be reached at Maria at mahdlo.net, Maria at madlo.net. I'd love to have the conversation, or LinkedIn, I guess, LinkedIn, Maria Trysla.
Well, I tell you, Maria, so many insights today. You are such a gift to many. And this positioning DNA really gets people thinking. It's one of those components that instead of just jumping to brand, you cannot forget about the importance of positioning. So thank you so much for your insights today and your appearance on StrategyCast. And listeners, you can go ahead and get a hold of me as well at Lori, Lori, at strategycast.com. Thank you so much, Maria.
Thank you, Lori. I appreciate the platform.
That's a wrap. Thanks for joining us on today's show. We hope your strategic brains are spinning with new ideas and bold inspiration that will elevate your strategies and marketing know-how.